Hello everybody, welcome for this final of the Hague Inter-University Law Debate Tournament. My name is Aurélien Lorange, and here in The Hague I'm happy to welcome with my colleagues this final with two teams which qualified for the final of this edition 2022, organized by the Corax Foundation and as well sponsored by Oxford University Press and Absolute Internship. So together we'll be hosting a match between the two teams who qualified. It means the University of Western Ontario, commonly called Western University, and as well the University of Applied Science, the Hague University of Applied Science, and we have the presence as well of some coach today as well for this very last match of the competition. So before we move to the match itself, of course it is time to give the floor to the teams themselves, the participants to this final. So I would like to give the floor first to Miss Megan Awa. Could you introduce yourself?
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Howa. I just finished my first year of law at the University of Western Ontario, and I am very excited to be here at the finals with all of you, and I wish everyone good luck.
Thank you very much. Miss Emily Varshala.
Yes, hello, my name is Emily Varshala. I'm currently a year 2 student at the Hague University of Applied Sciences, studying international and European law, and I really look forward to debating against you today. I'm sure it'll be a great debate.
Thank you very much. Miss Justine Dreibourg.
Hello everyone, my name is Justine Dreibera and I also just finished my first year of law school at Western University. It's a pleasure to meet all of you and to be here in the finals, and good luck.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ahmed Nabil Darwish.
Hello, my name is Ahmed Darwish. I'm also finishing my second year here at THIULDT, studying international European law, and I look forward to a fruitful debate.
Thank you. And Mr. Dylan Parobek.
Hi, my name is Dylan Parobek. I just finished my second year at the University of Western.
Debate. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. So now we'll move to the topic of this match, the final. So the topic which has been sent several days ago to both teams to prepare for this particular day. The topic was the organization of counter-terrorism response by states have to be regulated internationally by laws of war to define what is considered as outlaw when it comes to answering to a cyber threat from non-governmental or governmental groups. So now we'll know which position you will have for this match. My colleague will click and we'll know if you are in favor or if you are against. Against, so it means University of Western Ontario will defend the position that the organization of counter-terrorism response by states do not have to be regulated internationally by laws of wars, while the Hague University of Applied Science will defend the position that the organization of counter-terrorism response by states have to be regulated internationally by laws of war. So now you will have 5 minutes to review your position, and after that we'll start with the opening statement of 4 minutes by the team of the Hague University of Applied Science. Okay, time is up, so it means that we'll be able to start the match. So based on the allocation of positions, this is the Hague University of Applied Science. We'll start with opening statement. You have 4 minutes.
Thank you. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Hague University of Applied Sciences, we'll be arguing for the statement that the organization of counterterrorism responses by states have to be regulated internationally by laws of war to define what is considered as an outlaw when it comes to answering to a cyber threat from non-governmental or governmental groups. We are going to substantiate our position by expanding on the following points. Firstly, international humanitarian law was drafted with envisioned continuity, and therefore modern means like cyber attacks fall within its scope. Secondly, cyber attacks constitute an attack within the means of Additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention. And thirdly, international humanitarian law is imperative for protecting civilian data following the principle of distinction. How attacks are conducted has changed throughout history. Now, one can commit an attack of terrorism from within their own four walls. The only tool required, an electronic device. And we must recognize what counterterrorism responses of such nature would constitute: an armed conflict regulated within the boundaries of international humanitarian law. To come back to my first point, international humanitarian law was drafted with envisioned continuity, and therefore modern means such as cyber attacks fall within its scope. The key principles within jus in bello are discrimination and proportionality. The principle of discrimination concerns who is the legitimate target in wars, while the principle of proportionality concerns how much force is morally appropriate. The breadth and adaptability of all Geneva Conventions and these concepts of international humanitarian law can be directly applied to cyber terrorism. To provide a concrete example, in the ICJ advisory opinion on the nuclear weapons case, the court recalled that the established principles and rules of international humanitarian law apply to all forms of warfare and to all kinds of weapons, including those of the future. The ICRC has reaffirmed that this finding applies to the use of cyber operations during armed conflicts. Secondly, cyber attacks constitute an attack within the meaning of Additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Convention. To directly reference, Article 49, Part 1 states that an attack means acts of violence against an adversary, whether in offense or in defense. This protocol directly applies to all attacks in whichever territory conducted. To provide some context, the Tallinn Manual defines cyber attacks as a cyber operation, whether offensive or defensive, that is reasonably expected to cause injury or death to persons or damage or destruction to objects. The overlap here is evident. It is widely accepted that cyber operations constitute attacks under international humanitarian law, and it is confirmed by the ICRC that this includes harm due to the foreseeable direct and indirect effects of an attack. To come to my last point, international humanitarian law is imperative for protecting civilian data following the principle of distinction. The principle of distinction allows civilian protection during an armed conflict under international humanitarian law. During cyber terrorist attacks and responses, essential civilian data, such as medical data, social security data, and bank accounts are breached. The principle of distinction, therefore, must address civilian data protection, such as operations cause damage to civilian objects, be it of digital nature, which could cause more harm to civilians than the destruction of physical objects. Ladies and gentlemen, cyber terrorism is a new threat to the peace of security of the world that we live in. These attacks not only should, but must be regulated by the laws of war to most effectively ensure civilian safety and lawful means of warfare. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now it is time as well to give the floor to the University of Western Ontario for the opening statement. You have 4 minutes.
Before I begin, can I confirm I'm audible and visible?
Yes, you are.
Thank you. Good afternoon to our judges, and good evening to my colleagues at the Hague University of Applied Sciences. Today, my colleagues and I will be arguing that the organization of counterterrorism responses by states must not be regulated internationally by laws of war to define what is considered as an outlaw when it comes to answering to a cyber threat from non-governmental or governmental groups. Cyber threats have become a normal part of our modernized society. Insights from the Identity Theft Research Center show that recorded data breaches increased by 17% in 2021 compared to 2020. A recent example includes the Colonial Pipeline attack in May of 2021, where the fuel provider suffered a ransomware attack which led to fuel disruptions and mass panic buying across the US. Moreover, a 2019 article states that our own school, Western University, suffers an average of 630,000 attempted cyber attacks per day. That will equate to about 1,750 attempted cyber attacks by the time I'm finished speaking. It would not only be impractical and inappropriate, but also infeasible to regulate all of these cyber attacks through the laws of war. The International Committee of the Red Cross states that the laws of war, or international humanitarian laws, are a set of international rules that set out what can and cannot be done during an armed conflict. However, as illustrated through the previous examples, cyber threats are not always part of armed conflicts because they can occur in both peacetime and wartime. Moreover, the responses to armed conflicts often include deploying armies and military personnel, which are inappropriate responses to cyber threats, as these individuals are trained in the laws and regulations around combat, not cyber threat response. Instead, there are other, better suited domestic personnel who can respond to cyber attacks in non-violent and more constructive ways. Additionally, the Tallinn Manual, which provides expert guidance on how international law applies to cyber operations, states that cyber countermeasures must not rise to the level of a use of force, and those countermeasures be temporary in nature and reversible as far as possible. However, the laws of war are meant to provide guidance on the use of force and be destructive, hence going directly against the Tallinn Manual. Moreover, terrorism can take place in peacetime and wartime by state and non-state actors. For example, ISIS has carried out war crimes of committing acts of terror in both Syria and Iraq, while at the same time also carrying out peacetime terrorist attacks in countries around the world. The laws governing these two types of actions are clear. International humanitarian law governs the crimes committed during war, and international counter-terrorism treaties apply to other acts committed outside the context of war. There is no need to confuse the law by collapsing these two areas, wartime and peacetime law, into one, just because we are considering cyber threats. Today, Megan will be presenting our first argument, that the international humanitarian laws written for traditional kinetic warfare cannot guarantee the safety and well-being of civilians in cyberspace, and using them to regulate counterterrorism responses by states is neither functional nor effective. Secondly, Dylan will be arguing that destroying the foundation of the current international system involving cyber terrorism will forsake the citizens of the global community by granting unnecessary powers to entities that will abuse this force. At the end of our submission, it will be clear that international humanitarian law is not the sole framework through which cyber terrorism should be addressed. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. So now we'll move to the first rebuttals. So we give the floor to the Hague University of Applied Science for the first rebuttal. You have 2 minutes.
In order to understand whether IHL applies to cyber attacks, one must consider the object and effect. We know this because of the Vienna Convention of the Law of Treaties. It says that in light of the object and purpose of any treaty, it shall apply. And in this case, the object of any IHL treaty would be to protect civilians and combatants alike. My colleague discussed how this would apply directly, and this is how it would apply indirectly. So it applies twofold. Firstly, the opposing team said that cyber attacks have been a normal occurrence, and this is true, and we agree with that. And that is why IHL must be able to tackle it and must be able to guide it, instead of this becoming a major threat, which it will be given the automation that is going on in the world. Furthermore, the colleague provided really good and well-articulated examples. However, all these examples were domestic. And that is particularly why all these cyber attacks have failed. They have failed because they were held domestically. However, if they were held internationally, and if they were able to use international cooperation and all the principles that the UN does encourage in Article 1 of the UN Charter, if they were able to use international cooperation, there would be another story. They'd have many states being able to work on stopping one cyber attack. Secondly, my colleague said that they are non-violent and that IHL rules tend to be more destructive or are meant to be destructive because they tackle wars. This is just not true. IHL is here in order to guide wars and is here in order to ensure that wars can be conducted safely in a manner that encourages proportionality, and we have the principle of proportionality and the principle of humanity to ensure that IHL does not get out of hand. IHL is meant to stop and limit wars. It is meant to ensure that civilians are safe during wars, and they can also and IHL can also be useful while ensuring that civilians are safe from cyber attacks. And just because the use of force is not direct does not mean IHL does not apply. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now it is time as well for the University of Western Ontario to give their first rebuttal. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I wish to thank my opponent for his arguments. However, I must respectfully disagree. The envisioned continuity of international war laws is fine in theory. However, in practice, international humanitarian laws cannot guarantee the safety and well-being of civilians in cyberspace, and using them to regulate counter-terrorism responses by states is neither functional nor effective. There is only one cyberspace, and it is shared by both military and civilian users on interconnected global networks. The goal of international humanitarian law is to prevent death and damage to civilians from military operations. However, as they were written in a time before sophisticated cyber attacks were even thought possible, its focus is on physical harm and damage, which becomes significantly more complicated in cyberspace. The ICRC and the authors of the Talon Manual outlined their serious concerns about simply applying the current international laws of war to cyber operations that do not fully encompass the wide range of damages that can be achieved through cyber attacks. The ICRC is the guardian of the IHL, and if they say that international war laws are not the proper mechanism for responding to cyber terrorism, we would be wise to listen to them. In addition to the legal challenges of applying international war laws to cyber attacks, there is also the impracticality of responding to cyber threats with military forces, as they are far less effective than domestic law enforcement. The United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime 2021 module on counterterrorism in the international law context makes the argument on page 197 that cyber terrorism by organized crimes requires special investigative techniques by domestic law enforcement and international cooperation through mutual legal assistance. The majority of cyber threats are not active war, and it would be wrong and inefficient to treat them as such. There is a reason international law has separated peacetime law and wartime law, and it would be illogical to collapse these two systems for the sake of simplicity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we move to the second round of rebuttals. So I would like to give the floor to the University of Applied Science. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The opposing team has focused their efforts on attempting to prove that international humanitarian law is ineffective and that domestically it would have been held more effectively. However, the two examples that the team has provided were domestic examples that have completely failed. However, as we've seen in the international community, as my colleague has stated, the UN itself called for special operations with domestic authorities. However, this does not mean that it was not calling for international cooperation. In that context, the UN was calling for domestic action based on international cooperation and based on international principles. And these international principles are the principles of international humanitarian law. And that only goes to show how the international humanitarian legal principles apply and not how they don't apply. Another thing my colleague stated was that there would be an abuse of force, and they will go on to substantiate this argument as I understand it. The argument for abuse of force could actually be used both ways. As domestically, it's easier to abuse the force, especially when it comes to cyber operations, as we've seen with different dictators. North Korea is an example, Saudi Arabia is an example. They can censor networks and stop cyber attacks, but also completely oppress civilians. And this is why IHL is necessary. International cooperation is necessary to ensure that civilians are safe, even when domestic authorities are not responsible. International cooperation is necessary, and it is exactly what the UN calls for. Second of all, they mentioned the ICRC. The ICRC in that context was mentioning about peacetime cyber operations. However, cyber operations can also be used in wartime, and that's why IHL must cover them. Military networks also rely on civilian infrastructure, and that means even in peacetime, if anything that affects civilian infrastructure may also affect military infrastructure, and that needs to be covered by IHL. Traffic and air traffic is also uses military navigation systems. Therefore, it must be covered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So now I give the floor to the University of Western Ontario as well. For the second rebuttal, you have 2 minutes.
Before I begin, I'd like to confirm that I'm both audible and visible.
Yes, you are.
My colleague, Ms. Wachala, stated a new system involving more additional wartime laws is necessary. The only thing that this will do is break the historical necessary balance of power that has existed between wartime and peacetime capabilities, currently represented by the Talon agreements. In terms of efficiency at stopping cyber terrorism, nothing will change under any new system. My colleague, Mr. Darwish, has talked about working together, but domestic institutions, Interpol, they're all extremely effective and use joint operations in combating this threat. The people who want to combat this threat are always doing so. The only thing that will change is that more power will be granted to the military, who will abuse it once again. And it's not surprising in theory, as under peacetime laws, police officers countering terrorism have more checks against their power than the military because of the nature of the threats they face and the goals of the services. By creating one system, those checks against the unnecessary use of power are eliminated and thus allow for an abuse of force. And then now let's look at what happens in practice. Abu Zubaydah said, "They kept pouring water and concentrating on my nose and my mouth until I really felt like I was drowning and my chest was just about to explode from the lack of oxygen." He was an innocent man who the CIA had wrongly identified as a combatant. He was held without trial for over 5 years, and in one of those months, he was waterboarded over 83 times and tortured through many other medieval practices. The only people who went to jail were the people who leaked this type of information. Now, my colleague, Mr. Darwish, can talk about North Korea and them abusing their power, but they're going to abuse their power whether the international community looks at laws of wars or laws of peace. The American community has, and other communities will, if we allow this. And I asked my opponent, name one time where such action has not resulted in the gross reprehensible abuse of said power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now it is time to move to the conclusions. So I would like to give the floor to the team of the Hague University of Applied Science for their conclusion. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Honorable judges and their counterparts, the arguments presented by the opposing team most certainly merit thorough consideration. Nevertheless, to arrive at the right conclusion, the following should be borne in mind. The provisions of international humanitarian law were composed with the uttermost regard for warfare that would come to pass in the future. In its interpretation, the ICJ underscored that principles and rules of IHL apply to all forms of warfare and to all kinds of weapons, including those of the future. The expansive character of the authority of the Geneva Conventions encompasses the means of cyber warfare. There is, therefore, no reason why IHL should not regulate the cyber countermeasures that prevent attacks of similar nature. For the purposes of additional Protocol 1 of the Geneva Conventions, the notion of attack also comprises those that might be inflicted by the use of cyber warfare. Due to foreseeable direct or indirect effects of the cyber operation, death, injury, or any kind of physical damage may be caused. For such potentially lethal measures not to occur in a legal vacuum, laws of war should apply. One of the fundamental purposes of the international body of wartime rules is to minimize or prevent human suffering. This implies protection of civilians and civilian objects. It is with the purpose of upholding this cause that civilian data, an often targeted object, must be protected. The unmonitored conduct of cyber warfare is poised to bring about the destruction known to humanity only in times of war. It should therefore be subject to the laws of wartime. Thank you very much for your attention and for the organization of the debate.
Thank you very much. And now I give the floor to the team of the University of Western Ontario as well for the conclusion. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. In response to my opponent's concerns, I wish to be clear. Our team is not arguing that international humanitarian laws should never apply. If and when cyber terrorism amounts to armed conflict, then states should implement them, but they cannot be the only response. Our team is simply respecting the international laws as they are written and being honest about their limitations. Cyber terrorism is covered by both peacetime law and wartime law, and we must not collapse these two systems for the sake of simplicity at the expense of functionality. Today, our team has demonstrated that international humanitarian laws are insufficient for protecting civilians and their interests in cyberspace, and that domestic law enforcement and mutual legal assistance are proven successful strategies for preventing and investigating cybercrimes. Second, our team has argued that regulating state responses to cyber threats with international laws of war, as our opponents suggest, would provide too much power to individual governments to disregard a system of checks and balances that has been crucial for maintaining international stability. The International Committee of the Red Cross and the numerous legal and academic experts behind the Talon Manual have already answered the question of whether or not state responses to cyber threats should be regulated by international laws of war with a resounding no. We need to heed their advice and utilize the resources we already have, not turn the World Wide Web into a war zone. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So now we are done with the match. So we are done with this debate. So it means that from now you are not anymore under evaluation by the judge. So as usual, we'll ask for your opinion and of course your feeling concerning this match, but as well the whole competition, because it is the last match for this year. So I would like to give the floor first to Miss Megan Hawa. What did you think about this match, your team, the other team, and the whole competition here?
Hi, everyone. I cannot overstate how proud I am of my team members and myself and how grateful we are to our coach. This was a fascinating topic and definitely required a lot of research and learning on our part. And to debate with you guys here today was absolutely incredible. I think you also did an incredible job with your arguments and you really kept us on our toes. So, I mean, may the best team win. This whole experience has been just phenomenal. And I'm so grateful for the judges and everyone who helped make this possible.
Thank you very much. Miss Emily Varchala.
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to thank the opposing team for a very challenging match. I mean, that's ultimately what it was about. So I would say this match was very finals worthy. Thank you very much for the challenging opposing arguments that you posed. You're definitely very eloquently spoken, well-researched, so I can only congratulate you on all of your efforts. So yeah, many thanks to, of course, the colleagues from my team as well as our coaches, of course, for helping us throughout this whole journey. And yeah, may the best team win. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Miss Justine Dreiber.
Yeah, I can just echo what my colleagues have said. This match was definitely, I think, the most complex topic we've done yet. So it was so much fun researching and discovering the different layers of this topic. I think that both teams did amazing. May the best team win. And just in regards to the tournament in general, it was so much fun learning about so many different topics of international law that I sometimes didn't even know about. So it was really a great experience. Thank you so much for putting this on.
Thank you very much. Mr. Ahmed Amer Nabil Darwish.
You. I'd like to first thank the organizers for the tournament. It's been a long ride. I remember our first couple of matches in the internal rounds, and to be here is, I think, it's just surreal. And it's very nice to be with all of you. The other team did wonderfully. You were very eloquent, and there was a challenge debating you. And for my colleagues, I'd like to thank you for your work so far. We've been doing very well, and hopefully we ended on a good note as well. And for the coaches, you've been wonderful. Thank you for helping us throughout. Yeah, thank you for always keeping contact, making sure everything's put into place. And yeah, may the best team win. It was a very interesting debate, and yeah, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dylan Parobek.
Yeah, I'd just like to start off to thank the organizers of the event, all of the judges for volunteering their time and setting up such a well-organized event where I and my colleagues and our professor have found just such an enriching debate with talking and meeting other people from different countries and just how much you've put into it and the the effort and passion that is so clearly evident in every debate and every time that we see or talk with you. And next, my colleagues on the other side of the Atlantic, thank you so much for a great tournament. It was so great to meet you and debate you. You had great ideas. You're clearly well researched, so eloquently put. The time and effort is so clear, and I wish the best team wins. I thought you guys were fantastic, and it's just great to meet with you. And then just finally, just to thank my team, Justine, Megan, and our Professor Osterveld, just how much effort and how much that we put into it and everything. I just really want to thank you guys. I had an absolutely amazing experience, all the work and effort that we put in and everything else. I'd just really like to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you guys. It was an absolute honor. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Yaroslav Zaitsev.
Yeah, thank you. I'd like to thank the Correct Foundation and the organizers of the debates on their whole. We all know the work and the time and the effort that you've put into this whole thing, and it's been amazing. I'd like to thank my colleagues for soldiering on no matter what. It's been a slice. We've really had a good time debating everybody. The opposing team, I mean, the fact that both of the teams made it to the finals is a mark of how good of a job we've all done. Your argumentation was it was great. You had sterling arguments. It was just a great time debating you. I'd also like to thank the coaches for the guidance that's helped us out a lot of times. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We give the floor as well to the coach as well to say some words on their impression, obviously. Professor Osterveld, what did you think about this match and in general the competition?
This competition has been an absolutely wonderful experience to see it from the beginning to the end this year. It's our very first year being involved, and to have my students to have a chance to meet students from around the world in this fantastic format. I can't speak highly enough of the COREX Foundation, the organizers, the judges, and all of the teams.
Thank you very much. Now Mr. Altamash Khalil.
Well, safe to say it brings back old memories, and I'm glad to be here. First of all, I'd like to thank the Hague University for the efforts that they've put in. Just to tell you all how proud I am of them, the fact that they're just coming out of an exam week and being able to put the sort of performance that they've put today. Extremely proud of you all, and I thought it was a phenomenal performance from both sides. It was extremely. I don't know. I'm at a loss for words. I saw some smart interpretations of the topic, which at this point in time when I'm sitting here, I find it very fascinating. So all the best to both of you, both of the teams, for your future endeavors, and may the most suitable team win today.
Thank you very much. And Miss Gaibova?
Thank you very much. Well, first of all, I would like to, of course, thank the COREX Foundation, and thank you so very much for putting so much effort into this. It was a truly great competition, very international, and I think everyone learned a great deal, not only the students, but us as well. And I want to thank the students, both teams, for this match. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I really watched it with great interest, and I look forward to, well, the upcoming competitions, and thank you all very much.
Thank you very much. So I'd like to give the floor to my colleague already, Ms. Urbanova, to say some words, and of course we'll finish as well.
Thank you, everyone. It's been an honor and a great pleasure to watch you participate from the very first round and up until this final. It's been great watching you improve on your debating skills and on the arguments that you've been using through each round. And well done, and congratulations on your final match this year. Just like when we started the competition in 2015, it's wonderful to see it grow and to welcome you all in the first edition where we had 32 universities. We hope to see you in the next year, either in a position, again, your universities as participating institutions, or you yourselves as coaches, like with Mr. Altamash Khalil. That was he himself was a participant in the previous edition. So again, well done on this debate. It was a high-level debate. Well done on the research. On the side of our organizing team, I would like to invite you already to the closing ceremony that will be happening no later than the second week of July. We'll already schedule it and send you invites once the first score starts to arrive from the judges. The match for the third place took place a bit earlier today. So we'll be doing the announcement of the rankings as well as the announcement of the awards for the most watched debate, since this year was fully virtual, as well as the most favored debate. So if you look already in the previous emails and newsletter communication that we had with you, you might find the format on the form where you can submit your votes for the most favored match of the second phase of the tournament. We'll of course resend this link with an updated links for the matches of the semifinals and finals, of course. Feel free to share this, and by the time of 24 hours before the closing ceremony, we'll close the voting form, and we'll also announce the award for the most favored match then. Again, well done, and I'll pass the floor back to my colleague, Mr. Lavange.
Yes, so many thanks. I would like just to show you that we have the trophies, obviously. So it means that, they're free, but I have only two hands. And so there's a trophy for the winning team, a trophy for the second place. So it means automatically, the two teams today, they will receive one trophy. Of course, we don't know yet which one. And there will be as well a trophy for the best oralist. So it means the judge who will assess this match, they will have as well to vote for the person who made the best impression for this match, this particular match of the final. So, and the one who gets the most of the votes is actually the student who will receive the third trophy, which is this one, yeah. So it means concretely, yes, we will ship at least one trophy to Canada, and then we'll know to know which trophy actually will be awarded exactly for each team. So many thanks. Again, you have done a great job. You have had match with so many teams from different countries and different time zones. We had only one match this year in middle of the night as organizers, so that was a very good performance on our side. But it means all the other matches took place during daylight, and one time one team had a match in middle of the night as well. But yes, many thanks to the students. You can show as well to your friends and your professors and as well partners of university how great you can indeed orally argue on topics from IP, from international law, from regional legislations, human rights, etc. So it is something that I'm sure that you will capitalize during the next 2 years, and if you want to become lawyer as well, that would be useful. So many thanks to everybody, many thanks in Canada, many thanks as well to the students in The Hague. And a very last question that I give every time is for the students concerning, of course, meeting one day in person or setting the possibilities for that. So, Miss Savoie, have you been in the Netherlands already?
No, unfortunately not, but it's definitely very high up on my travel list, and going to The Hague specifically would be an incredible trip. So I'm definitely hoping to get out there now that hopefully COVID is settling down officially very soon.
Thank you. Miss Varshala, have you been in Canada, like in Ontario, for example?
I personally have not. I don't know if I'm speaking for my whole team. Have you guys been in Canada? All right. Well, in that case, no, we have not. So that would also be a really nice trip to go on, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you. Miss Dreiber, have you been in the Netherlands?
No, I've never been to the Netherlands either, but like Megan, it's also high on my bucket list to travel to.
Okay, so there are plenty of things about law to visit in The Hague, that's for sure. And Mr. Darvish, you have never been in Canada, from what I understand.
No, I have not, but I actually went to a Canadian school, so that's as close of a connection as I've made with Canada.
Okay, very good. Mr. Parobek, have you been in the Netherlands?
No, I have not, but one of my roommates is heading there for a semester abroad, and I'd love to see the beautiful cities in the country.
So when you will visit, of course, your friend, you can, of course, visit the university in The Hague as well. And Mr. Zaitsev, you have not been in Canada yet.
No, unlike my colleague, I haven't had the great fortune of making any connections with Canada, but I'm sure that all of us have plenty of time ahead of us, so we'll definitely drop the visit there.
Great, many thanks. On the side of the coach, Miss Oosteveld, I think with your name, you have been maybe in the Netherlands?
Yes, my father is Dutch, Dutch-Canadian. But yes, I've been in The Hague many times. I have appeared before the International Criminal Court. And then before coming in academic, I was a diplomat lawyer and appeared for Canada at the Assemblies of States Parties and the International Criminal Court negotiations. So I very much like being in The Hague.
Great. So it means, yeah, you might come with the students next time even. So it will be great. And on the side of Miss Guy Bovar or Mr. Altamash Khalil, have you been in Canada?
Not yet, unfortunately. I would have loved to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nor have I. I think The Hague and Europe is as far as I've come from India, so I think we'll have to plan another trip to Canada sometime. Maybe for my master's. Something to look forward to.
Okay, thank you. Many thanks to everybody. So now we are done with this session, and indeed next year let's try to see if we can have indeed this final or other match as well in person than in The Hague. So that's why, yeah, it's something to think about. Many thanks to everybody, many thanks to my colleagues, and of course we wish you a great end of this day or rest of the day for the Canadians as well. So we keep in touch, and of course we'll let you know as soon as we have the results, and of course in order to have that final session to announce the results and the ranking for the whole competition. Many thanks, wish you a good evening to everybody and good afternoon in Canada as well, and we keep in touch. Bye bye.
Thank you, everyone. Well done.
Everybody.
Thank you.